On June 13, 1989, Chapter 228 titled One-on-One Combat would be released to the public through Weekly Shonen Jump, showcasing the first epic battle between Goku and Vegeta. And over 191 chapters later, a whole show, another manga, 3 canon movies, a whole other new show, and a lot, and I mean a lot of video games, one massive question still remains. Who would come out on top? Goku or Vegeta? In all this time, not one has fully defeated the other to the point where the other was truly the victor and the other the loser. We've gotten close several times to this answer, but like always, it either slips away or is extremely unsatisfying for us and them. And putting my own personal take here, this is a fight I've been wanting for probably close to a decade now. So much so that it was a core foundation of my childhood. I liked power scaling before I knew what power scaling was even about. One could argue the whole reason why this channel exists is because of this question, even if it's not even my main subject I talk about here on this channel. So I think you can understand my frustration when we always get close to answering this question, but it's pulled away or is unsatisfying because it never ended up showing anything that these two amazing characters have done over the past 40 years. In terms of their combat skill and battle prowess. As a whole, the Goku versus Vegeta outcome has never been resolved. But what if it did? What if Goku clashed with Vegeta once again, but for the very last time? Who would win in the final battle between these two Goliaths? Oh, and by the way, hello, my name is Metas. Walk with me. So to cut to the chase, we're not going to be talking a lot about Goku and Vegeta's previous fights in full here, but using them as a reference guide for the most part. The reason why I'm setting it up like this or just even talking about it in this fashion is because, to be honest, those fights never really counted nor mattered. Why I say that is because either A, somebody interrupts the fight, B, they weren't going full power to begin with, I'm looking at you, Goku, with Super Saiyan 3, and C, it was a training match or sparring match with no weight to it. Good information, but it doesn't get us our final answer. Nor were any of these fights the final death match between the two. And due to the nature of this fight being very mysterious, a lot of speculation will be taking place in this video, but with a healthy dose of power scaling as well. However, the farther we get into this, the more you'll end up realizing that this is going to be a very complex video that doesn't rely on AP durability or speed in the conventional sense. Because the reality of it is, and the reason why I like this fight so much, is it really comes back to the basics of Dragon Ball, relying more on technique than raw power. I would also like to add, as we continue through this video, you'll kind of understand how we're trying to build this narrative for these two characters many years after the ending of Z. So where do we actually properly start with this question in mind? Shockingly, one source of Dragon Ball media has tried to answer this same question, Goku or Vegeta, and that would be Dragon Ball Online. Released on January 13th of 2010, this Korean MMO would introduce the world to the early ideas of Xenoverse and Dragon Ball Heroes. Now, to your dismay or not really caring, sadly that's all it would be used for in the grand scheme of things. The starting point for later Dragon Ball ideas, but never actually truly itself, and was officially shut down a short time later. However though, even though its carcass laid on the cutting room floor, it did leave a lot of its lore behind in timeline form for fans to pick apart for basically nearly a decade now. Dragon Ball Online was the grand answer to the question of what happened after Oob, with a little bit of the bonus of what if GT didn't happen. Or alternatively, if you fuse both of those questions into one thing, it's basically what happened to the Dragon Ball world after Goku and friends died. Now, I'm not going to break down the entire timeline of Dragon Ball Online here, because it's not relevant for this video. However, there is a key part in Dragon Ball Online's timeline between the end of Z and the beginning of its own timeline. That being Goku versus Vegeta, and why it's important is, well, Toriyama had a hand in playing in it, as the in-between up until leading to Dragon Ball Online was made by Toriyama, as he helped in this game's development very minorly. You heard that correctly. There is a semi-canon fight between Goku and Vegeta to the death death that Toriyama thought of and wasn't shown to the audience at all. That also had no influence from GT whatsoever. I will now read you the quote that has been haunting me for over a decade now. Realizing his death is imminent, Goku, who wanted to settle their rivalry, left Earth with Vegeta. Years later, a supernova explosion was detected, perhaps caused by Son Goku and Vegeta's battle. So close to the answer, but yet so seemingly far away. I think you can understand my frustrations with this quote. Toriyama finally speaks on probably one of the most anticipated battles every Dragon Ball fan has ever wanted out of these two characters, and it's kind of left up in the air for interpretation on what happens here. I understand why he does it, but I'm a nerd and I want a concrete goddamn fucking answer here. So of course, I look at this quote and I overanalyze it. So here's my interpretation of what happened in this fight and why it's kind of important for later in a post-Super era. And my first problem with this quote is at the very end involving the supernova statement. By that point in the franchise, Goku and Vegeta should be galaxy level threats, potentially even higher, scaling off of Super Buu and Kid Buu respectively, depending if you're using the anime or manga scaling. However though, regardless of what continuity you use for Goku or Vegeta here, after a 27-year time skip, Goku and Vegeta should be so far above Kid Buu's level, it'd be really odd to say they plateaued right there. Not to mention, first form Frieza was able to do star level feats back in the Namek saga. So honestly, with the ending half of this statement, you can totally disregard it if you want to. Honestly, that's how it's kind of set up initially too, by the way, but that's just my interpretation. This version of Goku versus Vegeta takes place sometime in 801, 10 years after the death of Kid Buu, and 17 years later after the end of Z, and Goku and Vegeta are now in their mid to late 60s, roughly. And using some Dragon Ball Super canon here, Vegeta does state with Goku that Saiyans start to age around their 80s, so being at their most 65 could be showing signs of losing their prime, potentially among other things. Remember, Goku got sick before, he could be potentially sick again in the future. So after all this time, if anything's been kept consistent since this timeline statement, it's that these Saiyans are going to age. But with that being said, a 27-year time skip has occurred, which means that Goku and Vegeta probably did get stronger. So how are they looking now, potentially? Now, honestly, there's a few ways you can probably look at this question. In the classic way, you can ultimately say that both Goku and Vegeta go their own ways, seeking power here, with Vegeta never potentially learning Super Saiyan 3 because he deems it useless. Now, I know in a post-Daima era, that's probably not the case. However though, even if Daima is canon to Super, or however we want to fuse these timelines together to figure this all out, even if Vegeta did get Super Saiyan 3, chances are in this scenario, he just doesn't see it as optimal, focusing on his base power and Super Saiyan 2 for the most part over these 27 years. And in Goku's case, would try to further his training he learned from Otherworld in these 27 years, trying to figure out how to use Super Saiyan 3 more optimal after his fight with Kid Buu. For the most part, people that know about this Dragon Ball Online scenario view these characters in this form, with their maximums being Super Saiyan 3 and Super Saiyan 2 respectively, with a certain goal in mind while fighting. And a bit of a bonus here, in Dragon Ball Z Kakarot in its ending of Z portion shows off a fight between Goku and Vegeta. While this fight is not of course taking place in Dragon Ball Online nor age 801, it is probably the closest thing we'll get to a Goku versus Vegeta style fight in this manner. Now switching over to scenario 2, this is where things change pretty dramatically depending on how you see it. Thanks to Daima and Super, Toriyama really does imply that Goku and Vegeta will always seek for further strength, regardless if it's peacetime or somebody is threatening the Earth. So both of them having some level of Super Saiyan 3 mastery that we've never seen before is totally likely after a 27-year time skip. Hell, look what happens after a 7-year time skip. In specific, looking at Majin Vegeta versus Goku, meaning that the Goku versus Vegeta online fight is pretty crazy at its highest level, if you want to take it that far. But regardless of scenario, this fight ends one of 3 potential ways. The first and obvious one that I think a lot of people actually share this opinion of is that both draw and die. After age 801, Goku and Vegeta never show up again. So it's highly likely that both of them just ended up killing both of each other in this grand final battle, no matter how you look at it. Funny enough, this would end up implying that they were equally matched the entire time after the Buu saga, which ironically enough mirrors what's happening currently today in the manga, with both of them being nearly the same in battle power. Now the next outcome is kind of weird depending on how you look at it. Goku wins but dies in one of 2 ways. One being after his fight with Vegeta, he is heavily exhausted and with his old body just dies of exhaustion. Kind of boring, I know. However, the second one is a bit more interesting. Remember, this fight happens because Goku can feel death is imminent. So whatever Goku was feeling before this fight potentially takes his life after his battle with Vegeta here. And with the next outcome being kind of obvious, Vegeta wins and dies right after as well. However though, it wouldn't be exhaustion that kills Vegeta, but probably a heart attack. Looking into some interviews with Toriyama states that Vegeta is probably going to be one of the earliest Z fighters to die. So after an intense fight with Goku at that level, it's potentially pretty likely. Regardless though, the timeline heavily implies neither of them ever come back in any form after this battle, meaning that, yeah, they're going to see King Yama after this fight. And you could say potentially they actually had something planned in game to explain where their whereabouts were afterwards. However, we don't know, and it was never elaborated on afterwards in any like concept art or game details. Overall, a pretty cool idea for an MMO, but it's way too vague of an answer to figure out who would actually potentially win this outcome. But it does leave us some pretty crucial details that Toriyama does imply here, that Goku and Vegeta will have a final fight, they continuously have a rivalry between each other, and more than likely do train after the fight with Majin Buu. End of Z and Super, and even a little bit of Daima, do prove these ideas as entirely correct. So with the basic idea here, now we can lay out the groundwork of a post-Super era Goku and Vegeta final battle. Now I'll be taking a look at both the Dragon Ball Super anime and manga here, with a emphasis more looking at the manga than anything because, to be frank, the anime hasn't been very relevant in a very long time now, in terms of what these characters can truly do. If anything, it actually highly complicates the final battle if we just strictly use the anime. And since we're on this point already, we'll just talk about it. Now, with no complex power scaling involved here, Anime Tournament of Power Goku is vastly stronger than Anime Tournament of Power Vegeta. This can be shown through the fact that MUI and UI are the only things that push Jiren to the near edge. And when Vegeta wanted Jiren to actually do the same level of power, he got curb stomped. Note, this is before Blue Evolution. However, Vegeta never pushes Jiren anywhere to those limits that MUI ever did. He's able to hold off Jiren for a little bit in Blue Evolution, but aside from that, that is Vegeta's greatest feat within this part of the Tournament of Power. So through that surely alone, Vegeta is nowhere near Goku's power. However though, by the end of the Tournament of Power, Goku loses the ability to enter UI and MUI, meaning that Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken times 20, which is fairly compared to Blue Evolution, is Goku's current strongest, meaning that both Goku and Vegeta in the anime seem to be near equals. Now, if for whatever reason you don't like the manga and the Super anime is the end all be all, if the final battle were to take place with this current scaling, with a post 17-year training arc between the two, with no changes, would probably end up in a tie where both of them die. However, because we know further context of Goku's character, he would probably end up trying to figure out how to use UI and MUI. So there was a reality where either A, they both die, or B, Goku wins with Vegeta's death because of MUI. But to be fair to Vegeta's character, if he did try to learn anything new, it would be applied here. Now, the context of getting Ultra Ego is not set within the anime at this current point in time. So there is a possibility that Vegeta potentially tries to learn MUI and UI. However, though, I highly doubt it because it's not really his thing character-wise. Meaning that Goku and Vegeta either draw or Goku just straight up wins thanks to MUI, at least within the Super anime timeline, in age 801. But now we finally get into the fun stuff. And picking up where we last left off, we have the Manga Tournament of Power. Now, for the most part, it is very similar to the anime, where it is kind of just outright stated and heavily implied that Goku is just stronger than Vegeta here, regardless of any transformation he's had previously. However, though, this version of Goku actually learns how to use Ultra Instinct and mastered Ultra Instinct later on. But of course, we have a problem here. Unlike the anime continuity, where Goku and Vegeta can get stronger every time they get closer to death, Goku and Vegeta here cannot. They have hit their climax in terms of their power with their current forms of Super Saiyan Blue. The only way to progress now is through Ultra Instinct and Ultra Ego, and not through power, but more technique. So before Ultra Instinct and Ultra Ego, how strong are Goku and Vegeta now? Rewinding the clock back to Battle of Gods, either in the anime or manga, Super Saiyan God Goku and God of Destruction Beerus shook the macrocosm of Universe 7 / potentially could destroy the macrocosm of Universe 7 through sheer punches alone. Universe 7 is built up of multiple infinite spaces, with a number of smaller spaces within those spaces as well, meaning that this feat that Goku accomplished with Beerus at bare minimum would be low complex multiversal, and potentially even being higher depending on how you want to see it. However, though, we're talking about a weaker God Ki Goku here.
Now I'll show you the Kaioken!
with the current versions of the character being vastly stronger. If you wanted to put some numbers to it, Super Saiyan Blue Goku is 50 times stronger than that, on top of Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken times 20, so that's 20 times stronger than that previous form, on top of whatever multiplier you want to put on Ultra Instinct Sign, and then Mastered Ultra Instinct. And that's not even factoring in Zenkai boosts they've got along the way since that fight. And all of that scaling would then apply to Vegeta in terms of AP and durability for both of them actually. So if you want to say Goku and Vegeta are like high complex multiversal plus beings, sure, go ahead. And in terms of speed, these guys have always been massively faster than Light Plus, but in terms of the manga in specific here, these guys have been able to react to instantaneous speeds. So both of them are fast as hell as well. No matter what scaling you use for Goku or Vegeta, for the most part until Ultra Ego and Ultra Instinct, they are basically tied. But for some time, Goku was definitively the stronger of the two. Briefly looking at the Moro arc, Mastered Ultra Instinct and Ultra Instinct's Susanoo form? Yeah, that's a thing, are pretty much definitively stated to be some of the strongest stuff we've ever seen in the series, up until that point. Sure, Vegeta did go through a training arc, but it basically meant nothing in the very end of it, only showing Vegeta that Goku's method of training isn't for him, and he needs something else completely different. Simultaneously, while Goku is definitively the strongest of these two, Mastered Ultra Instinct still has its weaknesses. Yes, Mastered Ultra Instinct with the Susanoo is probably Goku's strongest transformation, it still has its drawbacks. It consumes a ton of energy in the long term, and was only able to successfully defeat Moro after Oob rejuvenated Goku's energy supply to overpower him. Mind you, this Moro also was angel amped and fused with the entire Earth at the time. So it's obvious to both fighters they have a lot of areas to grow in, and by the next arc, that being the Granola arc, Goku and Vegeta definitely figure that out. In classic Goku fashion, Goku finds ways around Ultra Instinct's stamina problem. Goku, being the fighting genius that he is, thinks instead of using Mastered Ultra Instinct, he should use Ultra Instinct Sign, which has a better cost-effective use with it, redubbing it True Ultra Instinct. Simultaneously, Goku uses UI in his base form transformations. While they're not as effective as True Ultra Instinct or Mastered Ultra Instinct, it is definitely a hell of an improvement compared to what the TOP showed. And when talking about what happened specifically within the Granola arc with Goku, Goku goes from struggling against Granola to then surpassing Granola to then fighting in tandem with Vegeta against the new strongest guy in the universe, that being Gas at the time. And from what we can tell, drawing even with him while tag teaming, which leads us down the path of Ultra Ego Vegeta and how he caught up with Goku. And more likely than not, this will probably be the last time Vegeta catches up to him. You see, Vegeta is very lacking in power here by the end of the Moro arc. Goku has used Ultra Instinct so much that he's able to use it in a plethora of ways now. It is extremely obvious that Goku is the stronger of the two, like I've been saying. However though, Beerus realizes this and tries to tell Vegeta about his methods. In doing so, Vegeta ends up learning Ultra Ego during his fight with Granola, then proceeds to show up Goku and his powers in what can only be called a pretty even matchup. With Vegeta revealing the power behind Ultra Ego is the fact that when he takes damage, he indeed gets physically stronger. So in a long-term fight, Ultra Ego could, in theory, eclipse any opponent. However though, Granola shows off Vegeta's weakness here, that being Ultra Instinct has a stamina issue versus Ultra Ego's vitality issue. Vegeta needs to be hurt in order to get stronger. So if Vegeta takes too much damage, Ultra Ego is technically meaningless in the long run. But like I said before, after a quick fix, Vegeta is able to go even with Goku while fighting Gas, who is a stronger version of Granola who wished to be the strongest in the universe. So by the end of the Granola arc, it's pretty clear to the audience, or just plainly to me, that both Goku and Vegeta are basically pretty even by this point, with Vegeta here gaining a massive spike in power thanks to Ultra Ego, with the only argument saying who the strongest out of the two of them being is maybe Goku, but that's only with the Susanoo, which Goku does not have full control over yet, giving credence to the idea that Goku and Vegeta are the strongest in the universe besides Beerus. Never mind, they just got one-shotted by Black Frieza. Son of a bitch. Yeah, so if it wasn't obvious, the last two arcs of Super are basically telling the audience that Vegeta and Goku have a lot of weaknesses about their current forms that they need to overcome. In Goku's case, it's the fact that he's always constantly wasting stamina, something that Whis brings up to him personally. And on Vegeta's side, Vegeta doesn't really know Ultra Ego well that yet, with the added issue that Vegeta has a fatality issue with the transformation. These key issues need to be solved before they fight Black Frieza. In doing so, they will truly harness the power of gods. And they truly might need to. In some promotional material, Black Frieza is apparently nearing the powers of a god of destruction. That god of destruction probably being Beerus, which means we finally caught up to the current point in time.
No, I want to kill you.
With Gohan, Piccolo, and Broly possibly being at Goku and Vegeta's level, maybe even surpassing them just a little bit. However, I don't think this is relevant for this conversation, as the status quo for Dragon Ball is Goku and Vegeta always being number 1 and 2. So for now, even if they might be stronger, this won't be the status quo for very long. So with the Dragon Ball Super groundwork out of the way, we can now finally talk about the end of Z scaling and context before the true final battle. End of Z Goku is said to be the strongest in Daizenshu 4. If taken at face value, this means Goku is not only stronger than Vegeta by the end of Z, but by this point is also stronger than Broly, Beerus, Jiren, Beast Gohan, Orange Piccolo, and yes, even Black Frieza. Mind you, Black Frieza one-shot both True Ultra Instinct Goku and Ultra Ego Vegeta, while simultaneously being compared to God of Destruction levels of power or being near it. Mind you, all of those characters at one point or another in the past few years have been described as some of the strongest characters in their respective time periods. Only for End of Z Goku to be stronger than all of them after their debuts is absolutely ridiculous. Now, for some people in the comments who are going to argue against this, Toriyama adds an additional scene within chapter 519 of Vegeta saying, "Sooner or later I will defeat you, Kakarot," implying the fact that even Vegeta now, at the end of Z, still thinks he's number 2 to Goku, implying the fact that Vegeta would be stronger than everybody previous except Goku, which is still a pretty crazy feat for the Prince of All Saiyans. However, circling back to the Dragon Ball Online portion of this video, we are going under Dragon Ball Online's logic of a final battle nearing the end of their prime, not the end of Z. So Goku might be stronger here, but maybe not 17 years from now. So with all that information gathered from Dragon Ball Online, Kakarot, a majority of it from Super, and a little bit of stuff from the end of Z, what would the final battle between Goku and Vegeta look like? Following Dragon Ball Online's idea, Goku and Vegeta's battle would take place sometime in their early 60s, maybe at the most their late 70s. And since we're going off the manga's logic here, Goku and Vegeta have been at max power for years now by this point in time. And with them constantly training during peacetime, something that's been shown in the past, Goku and Vegeta would still be at their peak. Meaning that the only areas that would give them an advantage would of course be their technique, mindset, and the abilities that they learned in Super. Looking at Goku and what he's bringing to this fight is very obvious. Years of battle experience, training under multiple different masters, and by this point in the series, having a plethora of very powerful transformations, especially Ultra Instinct. And the reason why I'm just saying Ultra Instinct is by this point in the series, after fighting somebody like Black Frieza, potentially even Beerus as a final boss at the end of Super, Ultra Instinct here would be basically perfected. There would be no true weaknesses. The same thing Whis was trying to get across to Goku before, a state of Ultra Instinct that wastes little to no stamina, with also the potential power of using Ultra Instinct in any of his other Super Saiyan related transformations. Much better than anything we've seen in the past. Now switching over to the other side, let's talk Vegeta. With less training experience with masters, but a much better natural talent at fighting, Vegeta is coming here with a lot. His biggest trump card here being Ultra Ego. In specific here, just like with Ultra Instinct, this version of Ultra Ego has been mastered, and a lot of the shortcomings of this ability have more than likely have been solved since the end of Super. Instead of Vegeta being a total berserk brute in this state, it'd be something more similar to Beerus and how he can just casually destroy things with his powers of a god of destruction. On top of that, I feel like Vegeta would either A, with his ability to rapidly grow, would either try to take less damage in order to use the ability to its fullest, or has either figured out how to make his vitality even better than it was previous in Dragon Ball Super. All in order with either of those to rapidly grow in battle, in the long term rather than the short. Now, something that they'll both end up sharing is the fact that they'll probably won't use Super Saiyan 2 or 3 here. Stated by Akira Toriyama during a Battle of Gods interview, Super Saiyan 2 and Super Saiyan 3's power will end up just folding on into Super Saiyan 1 at some point. We've seen this idea already be displayed with Vegeta in the long term of this this franchise, but if anything, this solidifies it right here and now. And with so many years past the end of Z, more than likely than not, if this statement is true, and it probably is coming from Toriyama, Super Saiyan is the end-all be-all other than Blue and the original God State, and their variations that will show up in this battle. Some other minor things to note is this battle will be long and hard. In no way could it hypothetically be short in any regard. Remember, Goku and Vegeta know their transformations, the techniques of the others, their battle IQ, their weaknesses, etc., etc. This will be the ultimate display of both of their powers and knowledge of each other. And while not a very important part in the grand scheme of things, the only way I would be able to visually tell you guys how this fight would look would be something similar to what happened in the manga between Beerus and Champa, where the two gods of destruction are casually destroying planets, not even using their full god of destruction abilities. So imagine what happens when two god of destruction level characters who want a death match between the two to see who truly is the strongest of the both of them actually play out. They wouldn't just blow up a star and cause a supernova. They wouldn't just need a planet like Vegeta said in the anime. These two would need the entire galaxy to see who truly is the strongest, potentially even the whole macrocosm of Universe 7. So with everything laid out and being so far into the future, who would win in the final battle? Goku or Vegeta? Now, there's a very obvious answer here if you believe everything post-Super still makes canonical sense to what Toriyama said over a decade ago. Looking at the manga 30th anniversary guide, Anti-Zenchu 4, it is pretty clearly obvious that Toriyama thinks no matter what, Goku will always be the strongest, to such a point that after Z, in a post-Super context, a true mastered Ultra Instinct Goku is literally the strongest ever. Verbatim, no debate. Even without Toriyama's assistance here, looking at what Goku could hypothetically do here, if this fight was done extremely fast and Goku wasn't playing around, which I think is possible, Goku and his skills are more than enough to defeat Vegeta. Now, that's assuming Vegeta is an idiot and is still using the style he was back in Super, which he probably isn't, which leads us to the other side of the aisle. These Toriyama statements are outdated as fuck. They were made before a post-Super era, with the only context giving in them is Dragon Ball at the end of its lifetime, meaning that we could totally disregard this, therefore meaning we have to get into the logistics of this fight. And I'll be fair here, Vegeta definitely has a lot of advantage over Goku in a long-term fight. Remember, Ultra Ego makes Vegeta stronger as a fight goes on. So if this fight is really a bloody affair that lasts a long time, logistically speaking, Vegeta should be able to beat Goku if he doesn't fall or succumb to his injuries, which might be harder than it seems. So in my opinion, who wins? To be honest, there is a lot of Toriyama bias here. And sure, those older statements are kind of outdated, but it's always been a constant theme that Toriyama thinks that Goku's number one, regardless of what era of time it is. On top of that, Goku's always been a more brilliant fighter than Vegeta, always thinking ahead, looking at examples in the past. That being the case, you can fairly say that Goku wins here, but if you wanted no bias in this fight whatsoever from Toriyama, Vegeta winning here thematically would actually be way cooler. The story of Dragon Ball has always been interesting when Goku is second towards somebody else, making Goku want to overcome that challenge. This has been a theme since the early stages of Dragon Ball, introduced by Roshi. So if Vegeta actually beats Goku, it would reinforce Goku to get stronger, reinforcing the ideas and themes of Dragon Ball. Personally though, because this is Toriyama's story, I would say Goku would defeat Vegeta here. And if Goku actually did beat Vegeta here, it would thematically seem very similar to the original Buu saga, and how Vegeta thinks he's second to Goku, but like in a good way. So with that all being said, thank you, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow me on Patreon if you want to see more exclusive content, stay hydrated, and I will see you in the next one, ladies and gentlemen. And if you want more Dragon Ball related content, leave a comment or something, I will definitely read it in post. Thank you, I'll see you again, deuces.